Okay. All right, we're going to carry on. Lots to work through in the second half of the lecture. All right. So, thanks. Okay. So the approach we've used so far is to start from lines and curves and then create surfaces using the loft tool. We can create surfaces using all sorts of other tools. So there's one button here which can be quite helpful, which is a 4-point surface. And what that does is it allows you to simply create a kind of square patch, effectively. But once you've created that square patch, you can come and change the control points. Even though you didn't create it using curves, there are still control points in this surface. So, for example, if you want to reveal the control points of a surface, there's a really, really helpful shortcut which is worth noting down and learning, and it is on your keyboard tapping F10. F10. If you tap F10 while something is selected, it will reveal the control points that we use to create that surface. And so what I can do is I can hold down Shift and select these two control points here, and I can drag them up. And now I started with a flat kind of squarish, rectangularish surface on the floor, but now I've changed my mind about where those control points went. I can change it into a sort of one of these weird ruled surfaces where actually maybe it might be interesting to bring this one down. And you can see already this is going to behave like a piece of fabric stretched across a frame or something like this. So F10 can be really helpful. The other thing about F10 is if you've selected this curve, for example, if you click away from that curve, the control points disappear. And you're like, well, I was wanting to use those control points for some reason. So if I select this thing and then tap F10, the control points stay visible even if I click away. So F10 is a really, really helpful command. If I want to close all the control points out, I can just press Escape, and then it removes me from my F10 mode. F10 will basically be really helpful for you in the future, especially if you select a thing that you've already made, and then this control point here, you can see that I can now change my mind about things like the orientation or the height of a box, and it'll effectively rebuild it for me on the basis of what I've chosen to change. Something's happened with my view. Whoa, what's going on? I'm not rotating around the boxes at the start. I'm rotating around the wrong thing. Quick recap. What button do I need to press in order to get my view back so it's central on these boxes in the cylinder? One at a time, sorry. Control A. Well, if I do Control A, that select everything, including the stuff that's off to the side. Frying pan. Now that's not quite what I wanted because I want to select my. It's helped a bit, but I wanted to put these boxes at the start. So what would I do? Go for it. Select the boxes. How would I select the boxes? What's your favorite type of selection for this one, do you think? Left to right, right to left. What would be easiest? Left to right? Yeah, I can go left to right. If I go left to right, I might miss out a couple. So I'll go right to left in this case because then I can get just these boxes and then my frying pan button, and now boom, I'm right in the center here. I want to show you some other really cool operations. So one way of using surfaces is you can draw the lines and you can loft between them, and you can build up very, very complex surfaces this way. However, you can also start with solids. So what I've got here is, let's make a few different solids. I've got this one here, which is a tube, which is kind of cool. I quite like this one. A tube has an inner and outer thickness, and then is like a cylinder that has a side. So I'm looking down this tube, it's got a thickness there. One of the things that you can do is you can copy elements you've already made. So I've made this tube, maybe I quite like it. I can copy it by just going Control-C, Control-V. And now I've got a copy of it. Now there's an even quicker way of copying things, which is I can use the gumball and I can start dragging this thing with the gumball. I haven't even typed anything yet. My hand's free. I'm dragging this thing with a gumball and I'm going to tap the Alt key. I'm just going to tap it once. I don't have to hold it down. I just tap it once. And then watch carefully what happens to my gumball when I tap the Alt key. Or my mouse, actually. You can see that on the screen. Something very, very subtle happened to my mouse. Did you notice? I'm going to tap Alt again and it will go away. What can you see? It's gone. Now it's back. Maybe I'll move my mouse like this so you can see. A tiny, tiny little plus. Can you see that? Next to my mouse. It's actually, I've probably picked the wrong, yeah, there we go. If I type Alt, I get a little plus next to my mouse. And what that will do is when I let go, it won't just move the object using the gumball, it'll duplicate it. And I tend to do this a huge amount. I'm like, oh, I want another one of those. Tap Alt, drag it out, boom, I've got another one. I can even do it with this. If I click and drag, I've got just like, I have to use my mouse to kind of guess how far I want this thing to go. But I can also click once and say 300, and that will move it exactly 300 millimeters to the right. So there's about 5 different ways. I can do minus 300. I can move it backwards. There are about 5 different ways to do everything in Rhino. Are you kind of getting this understanding that some people use Rhino in one particular way and I just don't get on with it? Other people use Rhino in a completely different way, and maybe that really works for you. I'm going to try and show you as many different ones as possible. And as you play with it, there'll be some things that will stick with you and there are other things that just don't. And that's okay. Don't panic that you have to learn all of this stuff. So I've got a copy of my tube. I'm going to use the gumball a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this red arc here, and that's a rotation arc. What that does is it allows me to rotate my cylinder around. Now, at the moment, that's going to happen just kind of willy-nilly. Do you see right down the bottom of the screen? It's quite difficult for me to show it with my mouse, but I will highlight it here. It's this area right here. Keep an eye on what's in that red box. And as I move this is telling you how many degrees you are rotating by. So at the moment, I'm rotating by 84.5944 degrees. Well, what if I wanted to rotate by exactly 90 degrees? Well, I can hold down the Shift key, and then it will snap my rotation to one of the 4 kind of compass points. Very similar to most 3D modeling software. Holding down Shift while you're moving something tends to constrain it in some way. I can do the same when I'm moving. If I move it in this way and hold down Shift, actually it scales, don't worry, just ignore me. I can hold down Shift. I can also do it when I'm drawing a curve. So if I draw a line from here to here, at the moment, I don't know exactly what angle that's going to be at. But if I hold down the Shift key, it will constrain me to making sure that I have to go in one of these kind of few directions. And that one's gone a bit funny because it's gone down into the ground. But you get the idea. If you want to constrain stuff, holding down the shift key. You got a question? Exactly the same as what we did here. You can click and drag, and that gives you kind of vague control with the mouse. Or you can click once and then type a number. Well, if you want to rotate this exactly 30 degrees, you click once, you type a number, and it's rotated 30 degrees. It's quite powerful, isn't it? You've got one little widget on the screen, but you've got at least 5, 6 different ways of interacting with this same thing. And is anyone just feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the number of things that they need to remember how to do? Yeah? If just give me a wave if you have learned a musical instrument at some point in your life, even if it's like recorder in year 1. Yeah, okay. So you've all had the experience of trying to learn a musical instrument. At the beginning, you have to think through everything, and it takes all of your effort. When you get better, it becomes muscle memory, and you don't have to remember, oh, what's the command for this? You just think, make a box, and a box happens. And what you want to do is aim to get there, not by being super clever or reading the manual, but you get there by practice. And that's why we're going to give you these little tasks, which get you to practice these skills. The practice will get you there much quicker than anything else. So here we are. I've rotated by 30 degrees. Maybe I didn't want to do that. I can just undo, Control Z, or I can rotate it back by 30 degrees. I'm going to go 90 degrees. Here we go. And then I'm going to sort of push this thing through here. And now what I've got is 2 pieces of geometry that are like completely intersecting. I could do exactly the same thing here by typing sphere. I'm going to make a sphere. And maybe I'm going to put that sphere so that the center of it is right on the corner of this box. Now, the way I can do that, first of all, is I need to enable snaps, which is down here called O-snap. O-snap stands for object snap. If I turn that off, as I hover my mouse around, nothing happens. Like my mouse doesn't kind of like magnetically pull itself to any of these corners. But if I turn O-snap on, as soon as my mouse gets close to one of these things, I've got this area here is a whole load of text check boxes. It says O-snap. And I've got end turned on, which means that the end of any line is something I can snap to. If I turn that off and I hover around here, actually I'll turn everything off, and then we can. There we go. I hover around here. Actually, that's already selected, so that's not very helpful. There we go. I was making a sphere, and I wanted to put that sphere exactly on this corner point. Well, I can use a end point of a line because all the surfaces is like a million lines. And so I can go to the end of a surface and find the end of a line, and that's where it is. So now I'm snapping to that point. I can also do snap to a point. Is there a point anywhere? Yes, look, I made a point over here. I can snap to that point, which is why points are actually helpful, because you can snap to them later. I can do mid. Mid is really helpful. What if I want to put a sphere? Let's do this, actually. I'm going to put a sphere exactly in the center of this line here. And that will give me the center of that line, the middle point of the line. You get the idea, right? I can do int for the intersection of 2 lines. I don't think we've got any intersecting lines at this, but if I had another line that was kind of crossing over, it would snap to the point that was the intersection of those 2 lines. You can play with all of these things and see how these work, because when it snaps, your mouse cursor turns into this little like thing where you can often see like a little line coming out of it, or you'll feel this kind of magnetic pull to this particular moment, and there's a little white thing that highlights for you. So here we go. I'm going to select that mid, and then I can drag my mouse out, and I'm just going to make I'm going to hold down Shift, so my sphere is aligned with the north-south of the north-south, east-west of the file. And there we go. I've got now a sphere sort of intersecting with this box. And you might think, well, what's the point of that? Well, Because the other way of making solid objects or making geometry is with a series of operations. Rather than saying, I'm going to draw a line here, loft the surface, hope for the best. I can do a series of operations where I start with major sort of areas of shapes, and then I can do things like digital clay. I can take a chunk out, or I can add a chunk on. And that's exactly what what Rhino calls, and what many other 3D modeling software called, Boolean operations. Boolean as in like I can add one in or I can take one out. It's basically what I'm doing with a Boolean operation. So let's just select these guys and type isolate. So the only thing I've got in my viewport is these two things. And then I'm going to type Boolean. And the Boolean operations are all the same. They all start with the word Boolean. And I'm going to do Boolean difference. Now, a Boolean difference, the best way I think to describe this is it's like the crocodile bite out of an object. So we're going to start with an object. We're going to make a crocodile, then it's going to, and that shape of that other object is going to take a bite out of the original one. So here we go. I've got a Boolean difference. I'm going to select the surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract from. So I want to take a chunk out of my cube, press enter to continue. So I'm going to do what the computer tells me to do, press enter to continue. And then it says select surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract with. What shape is the crocodile's mouth? That's the question it's asking. And I want to take a sphere out of the box. And press enter when done. Boom. What I've now got is the crocodile has taken a chunk out of my box, and then the crocodile's run away. You won't see him again. Now, of course, I'm pretty sure one of you is going to ask the question, well, what if I want to use that crocodile again? Do I have to make a new crocodile? Do I have to make a new sphere and then take that out? Well, no, what I can do is exactly the same thing before, Boolean difference, and I'm going to select this box, and it says select surfaces or polysurfaces to subtract from, but you notice in the brackets are these extra options. Delete input, yes. Delete cutters, yes. Delete input, if I switch that to no, all I need to do is click on it and it toggles from a yes to a no. Sometimes it's a number and it asks you to type in a number, but basically these things in brackets are like extra options on top of the command that I'm doing. It's like I'm firing a gun, but I also can like choose whether the bullet is purple or pink. So here we are, select surface or polysurface to subtract with, delete input, no. I'm going to select this guy, I'm going to press enter. Now at this point, what's happened is the crocodile has hung around. I've still got this lovely thing here, and I've also still got the original shape that I started with. So I can come back and do that one more time. And you can decide in different situations, you might want to keep your model really tidy by getting rid of the things that you've used to cut things out. You might want to use them again in another time, and you might want to keep them hanging about. But now I've got a way that I can start to effectively use Boolean operations exactly the same way that you would use clay in real life. I can either add a chunk on, and the way I can add a chunk on, I can take stuff off, which is easy. That's the easy bit. I can just take a chunk out, Boolean difference, use my crocodile teeth. And if I'm done with that, I can just delete it, or I can hide it, or I can put it somewhere else. But what if I want to add a chunk on? Well, let's find a cone. This is nice. And then I'm going to place my cone. Smart track is quite useful. Smart track is on. What smart track allows me to do is see these lines coming out of here? I've hovered over the midpoint of this line. Whoop, there we go. And then it's coming out this way. And then I'm going to find the midpoint of this line. I'm going to come out this way. And if I've hovered over both of those things, it'll then intersect between the two. I'm going to use the intersect point here. And then what it allows me to do is make my cone sit on top of my box. I've had to do that with that's a fiddly operation that I've just done. I've had to make sure that my smart track is turned on. I've picked up those O-snap objects, and then I've kind of very gradually dragged my mouse out. But I'm making a cone here, and this cone and this box are completely separate objects. But what if I want to merge them together into one piece of clay? Well, what I can do is Boolean, not difference, but union. Boolean union, when two become one. And now when I click on that, it's one object. There we are. And if I move my camera, it's quite difficult to do, but move my camera inside, what you'll now see is that this object has become kind of one shape, one digital clay shape. To be honest, Booleans, basically, you can get by with Boolean union and Boolean difference. Just think about it in terms of Boolean difference is taking a chunk of clay out. Boolean union is adding a chunk of clay on. Are you already thinking about how you might now start to use some of these techniques in modeling an object? Because the next task over the next couple of weeks is to model an object on your desk. You can do it in all sorts of different ways. There are tons of different useful things that I may want to talk to you about as we go through the next few weeks. And I'm basically going to structure each lecture so that there's something that will move on. If you're just starting out and getting to grips with this, there's something that's going to help you. And if you're looking for something a little bit more involved and to push you on a little bit more, there'll be something for you there as well. So we looked before at how you can turn a curve. There we go. I'm going to plop a curve down there. Maybe I've changed my mind about exactly where this one's going to go. There it is. Have a curve into a surface. There are a few other ways of turning a curve into a surface. If you've only got one curve, one of the things that you can do is you can tap it and type extrude. Extrude curve. It's already filled it in for me. Extrude curve. And then as you drag your mouse, it's going to turn that into an extrusion that by default goes up in the Z direction. So I drew a curve on the ground. I'm extruding it up, and I'm going to make a kind of, I don't know, like a cookie cutter out of that curve that's solid. I'm going to just choose that. And then this is going back to your question that you asked before about, well, all of this stuff is super, super thin in this digital world, but the real world is thick. It's made of actual stuff. So what I can do is select that surface. It's actually called an open extrusion, but it's a surface, whatever, same thing. And I can type offset surface. Now, an offset surface is now going to give me a whole load of these arrows. And I'll just do the operation and you'll understand what it is that I'm doing. If I try and explain it before, it'll take too many words. I'm offsetting the surface. The word offset is probably not the best word to use, and it's one you just have to learn, unfortunately, which is why you've got a notebook. But I can click that, and I can say I want to offset it inwards, or I want to offset it outwards. So let's go outwards, because that looks a little bit neater. And then I'm also going to click on distance. I'm going to set the distance to 75. Just pick a number, and then press OK. And now what's happened is that we've started with a surface that was paper thin, and now it's gone around that whole surface and made it exactly 75 millimeters thick all the way around. You with me so far? So we've gone from a piece of paper to like a brick wall or something. Now already you can kind of start to see that this might be interesting in terms of a piece of architecture. What if I wanted to put a door in here? Well, I've already lost my scale. So I better make sure I bring back some people. Yeah, there we go. You see, these people, let's just hide them. Let's bring this guy over here. There we go. This guy here. Maybe I want another copy of him. So I'm going to drag, tap Alt, get my plus button back. There he is. And this thing looking at this, what I'd probably like to do is to get the scale right. The easiest thing would probably be to use the gumball. And we've looked at move, we've looked at rotate, but there's also a scale bar. And this is one where you can scale it in one direction, or you can hold down shift and it scales it in all directions. Get rid of that for a second. That looks like a bit more of a practical scale for like a tiny ticket office or kiosk or something. Might be interesting. And I'm going to extrude that curve. We go up. How tall is the ceiling going to be? Somewhere about there. There we go. And then I need to make that thicker, so I'm going to offset that surface, and it's going to be 100 millimeters thick. There we go. So now I've got this guy in like a prison cell, but there's no door. How's he going to get out? Oh no! Well, luckily, a really, really cool command that I like very, very much to the rescue is we can draw a curve and then use that curve like a cookie cutter to cut a hole in a piece of in an object, in a piece of geometry. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I've clicked that from the side, but I could also type rectangle. And I'm going to draw a rectangle on the ground. Just anywhere, it doesn't really matter, just somewhere. Here's a rectangle, and I'm going to say this rectangle is going to be, well, I want it to be about the size of a person. I'm going to eyeball this, but what we could do is we could say a door is what? Go and measure a door, 800 millimeters wide, and it's about 2100 millimeters tall. So that's the size of an average door, something like that. And now what I want to do is I want to use this like a cutter to cut a hole in my geometry. So what I need to do first is I need to move it up onto its end. I'm holding down shift. See how all of these commands are kind of coming back, right? And how many have you written down today? What, 10, 11 commands? And already we're making architecture with them. So I'm holding down shift. I'm going to rotate this up. I'm also going to look at this, and actually what I need to do is I need to rotate this door so it's kind of feeling like it's facing this part of the structure. I'm not going to be too fussy about it. I just want to make a hole in the door. Now, the problem is that when I rotated it up, it rotated around the middle of the object, not the ground. So this thing is now in the wrong place. Oh no, how are we going to fix this? Well, super useful command. One I use all the time, and one that Rhino knows you're going to use all the time, because you know how you could type curve with a C-U-R-V-E, or you could be a bit quicker, you could have a curve with a C-R-V. This command is so used that it's only got one letter. It's just M. M, everyone's favorite command. Do you know what M does? I saw you mouth it. Move! Yes, we want to move some things. This is what we want to do. We want to make a thing and then move it somewhere. We make another thing, we move it somewhere else. And so Rhino knows you're going to do this all the time. You're going to get sick of moving. And if you have to type M-O-V-E, move the thing, you're very quickly going to throw your laptop out the window. So instead, what you do is you select the thing you want to move, you tap M, you press space or enter, and now we're into move mode. Move mode is super cool, because what I can do is using snaps, which are the cool things I just showed you about. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to pick that corner that's way down in the wrong place, down under the ground. Don't want that there. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to place this door. Oh, that'll do. There we go. That's a nice place to put it. And just to be, so it's moved it up. So it's kind of, basically I've picked a point, I've picked another point, and it's moved it so that that point is now exactly in line with the second point that I clicked. I could also turn on near snapping, and near snapping will allow me to pick any point along this line. So anywhere along this curve, maybe that one there. Maybe I prefer that one. Okay, now I know my door is lined up. I'm going to just drag it away from the structure a little bit. And I'm going to type, this is where Rhino becomes quite conversational. What do you want to do? Well, I want to make a hole in my wall. So what do you think I'm going to type? Any guesses? You won't be wrong. There's no such thing as being wrong at this point, because you don't know, do you? What might I type to make a hole in a wall? I could type hole. The autocomplete has found me a command. It's called make hole. What do you want to do? Make a hole? Type make hole. Boom. All right, now he's going to talk me through how you make a hole. Do you need me at all for this lecture series? Rhino's going to teach you everything. Oh, I want to make a hole. Type hole, I don't know. Select planar closed curves. Now it gets a little bit confusing because you're like, what's a planar closed curve? Well, a planar curve is just one that was flat when you drew it. So it isn't one that you've picked it up and moved it up in the wrong direction and all that kind of stuff. A closed curve, we already know what a closed curve is. It's one that goes all the way around and meets back in the middle, back where you started. We drew a closed curve earlier. And this one here, luckily, is a planar closed curve. It's exactly what we need. Enter when done. So I'm going to press enter because I'm done. It then says select surfaces or polysurfaces. I want to make a hole in this guy here. Press enter when done. Boom. And now it gives me this really cool little cookie cutter. It's like literally like a 3D cookie cutter that's going to go along and it's going to demolish a hole through everything that I drag my mouse through. So all I need to do is bring my mouse to the other side of this wall, and you can see that line in between, and I click once, there's my hole. Are we making quite complex things in our first ever play with Rhino? Yeah, this is like, you couldn't do this in Revit already, just because it's curvy. But there was nothing stopping us with this whole process. Now I could make another hole. I could even, by the way, this is useful if you use the command again, the command you just did, if you just press spacebar, you get that command back again. So now I've pressed spacebar, I'm going to select surfaces or polysurfaces. And if I wanted to, I could go all the way through the whole object, and that would give me two holes, one here and one here. But I could also just stop with only just the door. Maybe I just want one door, that's all I want. If I'm done with this, one thing you can do is you can delete it. That's not a clever thing to do because you might want to come back and make another door that's the same size. Sorry. A really clever thing to do is to keep yourself organized. Sorry, I hit a microphone. Keep yourself organized. We're going to come over here to my layers panel, which looks like a cake slice. I'm going to right click, make a new layer, and call this curves. Because this all this is a planar closed curve. I'm going to make it a red color. And then I'm going to right click on that and choose change object layer. I've got an object selected in the viewport. I can come over here and change object layer. And then one thing that happens is that this curve is on this layer, and this layer is set to be displaying as red. So it means that now this layer, this curve displays red in my viewport to let me know it's on that layer. And when I don't want to know about it, I can turn my little light bulb off and it goes away. But if I want to come back and use up my curve again to make another door, I can turn my light bulb on and then there's my curve back again. So it's an even nicer way than doing show and hide and isolate and unisolate and all of that kind of nonsense. If you have a list of layers and you keep your model in order, you can just come over here and choose which layers you want to look at any point. Layers are pretty much the one thing that if you get this right, you're going to have a really fun time playing with Rhino. And if you get it wrong, you're going to have a really terrible time playing with Rhino. That's true of CAD. It's true of basically every 3D modeling software. If you're organized, you're going to have a really fun time. If you're very disorganized, you're going to have a very bad time. And some people have learned this in CAD. They've learned it over the summer task. I can see some people nodding at each other. Good. Get yourself a little layer buddy who can tell you every 5 minutes, have you tidied up your layers? All already we're doing fairly well here, but what if I want to, in the last 2 minutes of this lecture, make a floor and a roof? Well, okay, let's make a floor and a roof. Might be interesting to make a roof that's not quite so, traditional. What if we take what we did right at the beginning? I'm going to draw 3 curves. And they don't have to be exactly right, because I can change my mind about them in the future. There we go. 3 curves. And notice something just very briefly. These curves, I've only used 3 control points. Very small number of control points. I'm making big moves. I'm not doing this. And I'll show you in a second why this is a really bad idea. Because most people, when they think I want this to be really accurate, they do this. Yeah? Anyone done that? Well, what we're going to do, 3 control points. I've now only got 9 points I need to move. So I can make very big moves with only 9 control points. I'm going to loft between those curves. And that gives me a shape. Well, yeah, okay, great. If you're into kind of more parametric stuff, we can do something called record history. I'll come back and show you record history another time. But what we can now do is we can change our mind about where we wanted that line to go, and then the shape will move with us. So now I've got 9 control points, and I can decide where they go, how high they are up in the sky. Whoop. I don't know exactly where this is going to go. I'm just kind of playing now. I said I was going to do this in 2 minutes, but I'm having too much fun because Rhino is supposed to be fun. That's quite an interesting shape. Maybe that is just a little bit extreme. Bring this guy over here and lift him up a little bit. That's kind of cool. It's got something to it. It's got something to it. What I can do is I can use this surface now to trim my walls. So now I've got this kind of curvy roof, and then exactly the same as we had before. Yeah, there we go. That's going to end up being, this is kind of nice because like the water's going to run off this roof. And maybe you could imagine that this is going to be like a really nice pond or something. We're designing as well as just playing around with the 3D stuff. I need to make this roof thick because it's not just a piece of paper. So I'm going to do offset surface, and I want to go upwards. Maybe I'm going to make it 100. Yeah, that's fine. There we go. And now I've got a thick roof on an oddly shaped kind of weird little pavilion thing. What I can also do is select this guy here, and I'm going to make a floor, which is just typing planar surface. And that's going to make a surface out of my flat curve that I drew on the floor. And basically, already, I've got something that I can see some shadows in. Maybe I'm going to go to my rendered view. There we go. I might type sun, turn the sun on, manual control, bring the sun down here. I want to see how the shadows are going to affect my building. Oh, look, there we go. Isn't that my little man just living inside his little house? He's got some sun on him. And this was what, 10, 11 commands? We've got literally 1 minute. Questions on this before we head off? Are you excited to get going on the modeling side? I feel like there was a lot of excitement around this last week. Excellent. Your task is on Moodle. Pick an item on your desk. Start trying to model it. You'd be surprised how much you already have now in terms of the commands that you need to use in Rhino. don't be put off by the fact that I made it look easy. This stuff takes a lot of practice. So I will see you next week here. And if you want to catch me in the studio for half an hour, I'll be with you then to answer any questions about existing tasks. Come and find me in the studio. Okay, thank you guys. They're on Moodle. You have to, on the right-hand side, there's a little thing called Panopto. And if you click on Panopto, all the recordings should be there on Panopto, and they will be. If they're not displaying, send Toby an email.